and welcome to Moms on Mics. I'm Joanne.
I'm Cash.
And I'm Sophia.
This episode, we are talking about the Sodder children disappearance on Christmas Eve, 1945, from their home in Fayetteville, West Virginia. What happened to 14-year-old Maurice, 12-year-old Martha, 9-year-old Louis, 8-year-old Jenny, and 5-year-old Betty? What was their fate? Kidnapped, murdered, or are they still alive? On the night of Christmas Eve in 1945, George and Jenny Sodder and 9 of their 10 children celebrated the holiday at home. One son wasn't in the house at the time. Around 1 a.m., a fire broke out. George, Jenny, and 4 of the siblings managed to escape, but the other 5 were never seen again. Just after midnight on Christmas morning, Jenny rushed downstairs to George's office to answer a telephone call. An unfamiliar female voice asked for an unfamiliar name. Raucous laughter and glasses clinking could be heard in the background. Jenny told the caller that she had the wrong house and hung up. Police later questioned the woman, who said she had simply dialed the wrong number. On her way back to bed, Jenny noticed that all of the downstairs lights were on and the curtains were still open, and the front door was unlocked. Marion was sleeping on the sofa in the living room, and Jenny assumed that the other kids were upstairs in bed. She turned out the lights, closed the curtains, locked the door, and returned to her room. She had just begun to doze off when she heard a sharp, loud bang on the roof and then a rolling noise. About half an hour later, she was woken once again, this time by heavy smoke filling her room.
She ran from the room in search of the source and found flames spreading from a corner of her husband's office. The fire prevented her from reaching the telephone. She then ran back toward the bedroom, calling to her husband. She woke Marion, who was still asleep on the couch downstairs, and told her to get Sylvia out of the house. Then she went to the stairway and shouted to wake the rest of the family. Only George and John, the 2 oldest boys, came down. John had yelled toward the next room where the other children would have normally been, and he thought he heard them answer. He and George started helping their father battle the fire, and Jenny, Marion, and young Sylvia stood helplessly outside, watching the blaze spread quickly throughout their home. There was zero visibility due to the smoke and fire, which had swept through the downstairs living and dining room, kitchen, office, and his and Jenny's bedroom. 2-year-old Sylvia, whose crib was in her parents' room, was safe outside, as were 17-year-old Marion, 23-year-old John, and 16-year-old George Jr., who had singed their hair as they fled the upstairs bedroom they shared. George feared that Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny, and Betty were still on the second floor, cowering in 2 bedrooms on either end of the hallway, separated by a staircase that was now engulfed in flames. George had tried to save them, breaking a window to re-enter the 2-story house and slicing a strip of skin from his arm. Desperate, he raced back outside, hoping to reach them through the upstairs windows, but the ladder he always kept propped against the house was missing. Quickly, he decided to drive one of his 2 coal trucks up to the house and climb on it to reach the windows. But even though they functioned perfectly the day before, neither would start now. George was frantic. He tried to scoop water from a rain barrel, but found it frozen solid. 5 of his children were trapped somewhere inside the engulfed house. He didn't notice that his arm was slick with blood, that his voice hurt from screaming their names. He was just a desperate father trying to save his children.
That would be terrifying. I couldn't imagine. So, not the house right next door to us, but the one next door to that got hit by lightning and burned to the ground. Fuck, long time, 10 years or so ago now. And it was absolutely terrifying. We heard the loud crack, and then we looked out our bedroom window and could see flames. It was fucking terrifying. And that wasn't my house, so I could not imagine standing there knowing your kids are inside. Ugh.
That's one of my biggest fears.
Right? Yeah.
A house fire terrifies me. I've got people on all levels of the house. And yeah, that's the one thing that I don't even want to think of.
Right.
It gets scary. Scary shit.
Yeah. And I mean, we know how fast house fires can travel to the neighboring houses, right? So we got out quick. And I like grabbed my phone, threw on some clothes real quick, and we said to our kids, this is not, it's funny now. It maybe wasn't at the time. But so we said to our kids, we're like, we gotta go. The house, my husband said, we need to get out. The house is on fire. He didn't say the neighbor's house is on fire. He just said the house is on fire, right? So, but our one son goes, what should I wear? And he was really young at the time, but we're like, doesn't fucking matter, put on clothes. It was kind of funny. And then we got our dogs and got out and stuff, but runs through your mind, what do I grab? Like,
Right.
because you know everything's going to be gone, right? And obviously our kids, our dogs, just make sure I say that in the right order. But like we knew to grab them, but like my brain was like, oh no, what do we grab? Where's the photo albums? Where's this? Where's this? But like you don't have time, but it's just running through your mind as you're trying to get out of the house kind of thing. It's absolutely terrifying. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Marion sprinted to a neighbor's home to call the Fayetteville Fire Department, but couldn't get any operator response. A neighbor who saw the blaze made a call from a nearby tavern, but again, no operator responded. Exasperated, the neighbor drove into town and tracked down Fire Chief F.J. Morris, who initiated Fayetteville's version of a fire alarm. A phone tree system. One firefighter phoned another, who phoned another, and so on. The fire department was only 2.5 miles away, but the crew didn't arrive until 8 a.m., 7 hours after the fire started. By then, the Sodders' home was a smoking pile of ash. Back then, there was very little training. Steve Cruikshank, a longtime Fayetteville firefighter, told the Times West Virginian in 2016 everyone was a volunteer and they didn't have much equipment. George and Jenny believed that 5 of their children were dead, but a brief search of the grounds on Christmas Day turned up no human remains. Fire Chief F.J. Morris suggested the blaze had been hot enough to completely cremate the bodies. A state police inspector attributed the fire to faulty wiring. George covered the basement with 5 feet of dirt, intending to preserve the site as a memorial. The coroner's office issued 5 death certificates just before the new year, listing the cause of all 5 deaths as fire or suffocation. But something didn't seem right to the Sodder family. During the fire, I kept watching the windows, but I never saw even one of the children. Marion told Raleigh Register in 1976, I never smelled burning flesh. They say you can smell burning flesh miles away, but I never did. George Sodder was a born Giorgio Soddu in Tula, Sardinia in 1895 and immigrated to the United States in 1908 when he was 13. An older brother who had accompanied him to Ellis Island immediately returned to Italy, leaving George on his own. Even though he was just a teenager, he found work on the Pennsylvania railroads, carrying water and supplies to laborers. And after a few years, he moved to Smithers, West Virginia. Smart and ambitious, he first worked as a driver and then launched his own trucking company, hauling dirt for construction and later freight and coal. One day, he walked into a local store called the Music Box and met the owner's daughter, Jenny Kiparani, who had come over from Italy as a toddler.
The couple married and had 10 children. 10 kids. Fuck.
I would have had 10 kids if I could have. So there's that.
Me too. Me too.
I mean, I probably would have had more than the 2 that I have, but 10?
Heck yeah.
Oh my goodness. I couldn't imagine. Where do you stick them all?
Well, back then, everybody had like 10,
Oh, yeah.
12 children. So
Yeah.
it was normal back then.
Do you know why they had 10 or 10, had that many kids back then?
Workers?
See, that's what I initially thought.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that is kind of part of it. But the other reason is because infant fatalities were so high. The more you had, the more likely some of them would survive.
Okay.
How awful. That's so sad, right?
That's terrible.
Oh, I couldn't imagine. Christ, life would have just sucked back then. Sorry, I am not cut out for old-timey living. I just know that. But
it's true. The fatalities were very high
Yeah.
back then. Yeah.
It's so sad to think that parents had to think that way. Okay. The couple married and had 10 children between 1923 and 1943. They settled in Fayetteville, an Appalachian town with a small but active Italian immigrant community. The Sodders were, in the words of one county magistrate, one of the most respected middle-class families around. George held strong opinions about everything from business to current events and politics, but he didn't talk about the subject of his youth. He never explained what had happened back in Italy to make him want to leave. After the fire, the Sodders planted flowers across the space where their house had stood, and also started to put together the odd moments leading up to the blaze. A stranger had appeared at the home a few months earlier, asking about hauling work. He wandered to the back of the house, pointed to two separate fuse boxes, and said, "This is going to cause a fire someday." George thought that it was an odd comment, especially since he had just had the wiring checked by a local power company, which pronounced it in fine condition. Around the same time, there had been another man who came to the home and tried to sell the family life insurance. He became irate when George declined. "Your goddamn house is gonna burn up in smoke," he warned. "And your children are going to be destroyed. You are going to have to pay for the dirty remarks you have been making about Benito Mussolini." This may seem like an odd comment. However, George was indeed outspoken about his dislike for the Italian dictator, occasionally engaging in heated arguments with other members of Fayetteville's Italian community. But at the time the comment was made, George didn't take the man's threats seriously. Shortly before Christmas, other members of the family had noticed a man in a parked car intentionally watching the younger children as they came home from school.
Jenny couldn't understand how 5 children could perish in a fire and leave no bones, no flesh, nothing. She conducted a private experiment burning animal bones, chicken bones, beef joint, pork chop bones, to see if a fire consumed them. Each time she was left with a heap of charred bones. She knew that remnants of various household appliances had been found in the burned out basement, still identifiable. An employee at a crematorium informed her that bones remain after bodies are burned for 2 hours at 2,000 degrees. The family's house was reportedly destroyed in 45 minutes. The collection of strange details grew. A telephone repairman told the Sodders that their lines appeared to have been cut, not burned. The family realized that if the fire had been electrical, the result of faulty wiring, as the official report stated, then the power would have been dead, and the lights in the rooms downstairs would have turned off. Instead, they shined brightly during the blaze.
This is kind of weird though, right? Because it was also stated that the mom turned all the lights off when she went back upstairs, right? Like after the phone call, she locked the door and turned all the lights off.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I should have looked into that. I wonder if when your house is on fire, if lights randomly like turn on or something, like due to like the switch melting or something like that, you know? Because it wasn't very clear. Like I tried to find more info as to why, like the discrepancy in the statement, but I couldn't find anything. So who knows?
A witness came forward claiming he saw a man at the scene of the fire taking a block and tackle used for removing car engines, which is why George's truck had refused to start. The man in question later pleaded guilty to stealing the block and tackle, but denied any involvement in the fire. One day, while the family was visiting the site, the youngest child, Sylvia, found a hard rubber object in the yard. Jenny recalled hearing the hard thud on the roof, the rolling sound. George concluded it was a napalm pineapple bomb of the type used in warfare.
Then came the reports of sightings. A woman claimed to have seen the missing children peering out of a passing car while the fire was in progress. A woman operating a tourist stop between Fayetteville and Charleston, West Virginia, 50 miles northwest, said she saw the children in the morning after the fire. "I served them breakfast," she told police. "There was a car with Florida license plates at the tourist court, too." A woman at a Charleston hotel saw the children's photos in a newspaper and said she had seen 4 of the 5 a week after the fire in a statement to the local authorities, she said. The children were accompanied by 2 women and 2 men, all of Italian extraction. I do not remember the exact date. However, the entire party did register at the hotel and stayed in a large room with several beds. They registered about midnight. I tried to talk to the children in a friendly manner, but the men appeared hostile and refused to allow me to talk to these children. One of the men looked up at me in a hostile manner. He turned around and began talking rapidly in Italian. Immediately, the whole party stopped talking to me. I sensed that I was being frozen out, and so I said nothing more. They left early the next morning. In 1947, George and Jenny sent a letter about the case to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. They received a reply from the agency's director, J. Edgar Hoover, who wrote, "Although I would like to be of service, the matter related appears to be of local character and does not come with the investigative jurisdiction of this bureau." Hoover's agents said they would assist if they could get permission from the local authorities, but the Fayetteville police and fire departments declined the offer.
Which is weird, right? Like, why wouldn't you get more help? What's the big deal?
Right.
But I guess a lot of police departments and stuff back then were very like, this is my area and only I will work in my area. And there was some like hostility towards the FBI because they kind of, I think it was more of like a power trip thing. Like they didn't want the FBI coming in and taking over their police station or whatever. But there's quite a few cases from it way back when. It's not the same anymore. I think now with like the internet, they're all, because they used to not like talk to each other. Like one police department wouldn't from like one state would not talk to another one, or even from like one county to the next, they wouldn't talk to each other because it was like, this is my territory, this is your territory, which that doesn't do anybody any good, right? So,
Right.
but it just seems weird. Like, you know, if it's an open investigation, why not have all the help? I don't know.
Yeah.
The fucking FBI. Like, why wouldn't you want them helping you? Next, the Sodders turned to a private investigator named C.C. Tinsley. He discovered that the insurance salesman who had threatened George was a member of the coroner's jury that deemed the fire accidental. According to the Times West Virginian, the individual had previously been employed by George, and he was a co-signer on the family's home insurance, which he'd increased from $1,500 to $1,750 before the fire, without their consent or knowledge. The detective also heard a curious story about Morris, the fire chief. Although Morris claimed that no remains had been found, he'd supposedly confirmed to someone that he'd discovered a human organ in the ashes. He hid it inside a dynamite box and buried it at the scene. After the Sodders dug up the box, they took it straight to the local funeral director, who poked and prodded the organ and concluded it was beef liver, untouched by the fire. Soon the family heard rumors that Morris had told others that the contents of the box had not been found in the fire at all. Instead, he had buried the beef liver in the rubble in the hope that finding any remains would placate the family enough to stop the investigation. Shady as fuck. Like, really? You're putting a beef liver? Like, they've just lost 5 kids, man. Come on. Uncalled for.
Yeah.
And you're the fire chief? What the hell, man? So the fire marshal was either paid off or they didn't push it. John, the oldest Sodder sibling, theorized to the Roanoke Times in 1984. The family wasn't sure what had happened during the fire, but they were convinced that something was off. Perhaps the blaze was an act of arson designed to cover the abduction of the 5 missing children who'd been taken away by an Italian mafia as revenge for George's criticism of Mussolini. Or maybe the children were victims of a human trafficking scheme. As John told the Virginia newspaper, our thinking was that kidnappers might have been trying to take us all. My brother and I barely got out of the house, but you can't relive it.
I was gonna say, it kind of sounds like the whole Italian mafia.
Right?
Could be why people don't want to talk, why people don't want to help.
Yeah, why it seems like local authorities are covering something up, right? Have you guys heard of this case before?
No.
I've never heard of it. No.
Oh, it's been covered by a few different podcasts. It's interesting. While researching, I did find like what I thought happened initially. I have changed my opinion. Yeah, after doing some research, it totally changed my opinion on it. But either way, it's still a crazy case.
It's just so sad over Christmas. One of like
Yeah, Christmas Eve and like 5 kids. Yeah, it's devastating.
Over the next several years, tips and leads continued to trickle in. George saw a newspaper photo of school children in New York City and was convinced that one of them was his daughter, Betty. He drove to Manhattan in search of the child, but her parents refused to speak to him. In August 1949, the Sodders decided to mount a new search at the fire scene. They brought in a Washington, D.C. pathologist named Oscar B. Hunter. The excavation was thorough, uncovering a number of small objects, damaged coins, a partly burned dictionary, and several shards of vertebrae. Hunter sent the bones to the Smithsonian Institution, which issued the following report. The human bones consist of 4 lumbar vertebrae belonging to one individual. Since the transverse recesses are fused, the age of this individual at death should have been 16 or 17 years. The top limit of age should be about 22 since the centra, which normally fuses at 23, are still unfused. On this basis, the bones show greater skeletal maturation than one would expect for a 14-year-old boy, the oldest missing Sodder's child. It is, however, possible, although not probable, for a boy 14 and a half years old to show age 16 or 17 maturation. The vertebrae showed no evidence of being exposed to fire, the report said, adding, "It is very strange that no other bones were found in the allegedly careful excavation of the basement of the house." Given the relatively short time the fire burned, the Smithsonian scholars said one would expect to find the full skeletons of the 5 children, rather than only 4 vertebrae. The bones, the report concluded, had most likely been in the supply of dirt George used to fill the basement to create the memorial for his children.
That's so
That
sad.
make more sense.
Yeah.
Speaking with the Times West Virginian in 2016, Cruikshank, the firefighter, pointed out that the work materials kept in the family's garage, like a 55-gallon drums of gasoline and motors, might have intensified the heat of the flames by covering the fire's embers with dirt in the immediate aftermath of the blaze. George also inadvertently created an oven that would advance the cremation process, the newspaper reported. Stacey Horn, an author who covered the case for NPR, shared similar reflections on the fire in a 2005 blog post, writing that the widely cited estimate of the flames burning for 45 minutes is misleading. In truth, she said, the inferno burned all night long and into the next morning. When the fire department did finally appear, it was still hot and they had to water the site down before conducting their search. Further, 2 hours is not even close to a thorough search. Today, the search for remains would take days and possibly weeks.
I just want to interrupt you. So, do you understand what they're talking about with the fire and the 45 minutes and that, and it not being like the time of the fire? Do you guys, you're both there. Shall I explain
In the
it?
beginning, didn't it say it was like 7 hours before they even got there?
Before the fire department showed up. Okay, so what?
Right. And a fire would absolutely take longer to burn than 45 minutes.
Okay, so basically what they're saying, because the initial report was it took 45 minutes for the house to burn down, which it probably did, because houses built in 1945 were built purely by wood, right?
Right.
So it took 45 minutes for that house to collapse.
Right.
Right.
But it would continue to burn.
So you guys done like a fire pit, and you know when the logs on the fire are done burning, but there's that black charcoal that's in the bottom, that's what continued to burn all night long.
Right.
And that's the hottest part of the fire, right? The flames are not as hot as the bed of like a fire pit. So this is basically what happened. So the house itself burnt down in 45 minutes, but the smoldering hot charcoal bits is what continued to burn until the morning.
Yeah, that would probably even burn longer.
Yeah, and that was going until the fire department showed up and
Yeah,
but it doesn't really make sense at first, and like with 45 minutes the house burnt down, what? But yeah, it's all built out of wood. It's 1945. right?
Yeah.
The basement
Yeah.
was wood. Everything was wood. So not processed wood the same as it is now, right? Like now it's processed and added fire retardant stuff, and that nothing was fire retardant in 1945.
Right.
So I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to clarify that. Not just for you guys, but anyone listening that is like, what? What do you mean it burnt down in 45 minutes, but it didn't until the morning? So yeah.
Right. The Smithsonian's findings prompted 2 hearings at the state capitol in Charleston, after which Governor Oki L. Pattison and State Police Superintendent W.E. Burchett told the Sodders their search was hopeless and declared the case closed. Authorities wondered whether it was possible, likely even, that the family's grief was clouding their judgment, leading them to search for signs of life where none could be found. Undeterred, George and Jenny erected a billboard along Route 16 with the missing children's pictures, names, and ages, and passed out flyers offering a $5,000 reward for information leading to the recovery of their children. They soon increased the amount to $10,000. That's crazy.
Right.
That's a lot of money.
Especially,
back then.
exactly. Oh, I should have worked that out to see what that would be today, but that would be a significant amount, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like that is
Yeah.
an insane amount of money for back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A letter arrived from a woman in St. Louis saying the oldest girl, Martha, was in a convent there. Another tip came from Texas, where a patron of a bar said they overheard an incriminating conversation about a long ago Christmas Eve fire in West Virginia. Someone in Florida claimed the children were staying at a distant relative of Jenny's. George traveled the country to investigate each lead, always returning home without any answers. In the late 1960s, more than 20 years after the fire, Jenny received an envelope postmarked in Kentucky. Inside was a photo of a man in his mid-20s. On the back of the snapshot, a cryptic handwritten note read, Louis Sodder, I love my brother Frankie. Little boys. A90132 or 35. Jenny and George couldn't deny the sitter's resemblance to their Louis, who was 9 at the time of the fire. Beyond the obvious similarities, dark curly hair, dark brown eyes, they had the same straight, strong nose and same upward tilt of the left eyebrow. Once again, the family hired a private detective and sent him to Kentucky. They never heard from him again. The Sodders feared that if they published the message or the name of the town on the postmark, they might put their son at risk. Instead, they amended the billboard to include the update image of Louis. It's hard sometimes to get to sleep at night, just wondering about them, George told the Associated Press in 1968. After all, if someone wanted to get me, why did they get my family too? He added. It's like hitting a rock wall. We can't go any further. We just don't know what to do now. George died later in 1969, still hoping for a break in the case. Jenny erected a fence around the property and began adding rooms to her home, building layer after layer between herself and the outside. Since the fire, she had worn black exclusively as a sign of mourning, and she continued to do so until her own death in 1989, when the weathered billboard finally came down. That's so sad.
Kind of crazy though that how it's still been open for so long.
Right? I mean, and why are all these people coming forward saying they've seen them, right? Unless they're just hoping to collect the reward. But the reward, you don't get the reward for just a sighting, right? That's never the case. It's always for the tip that leads to the arrest or leads to finding them, whatever, right? Like, but people are sick, man. There's so many people that do this on like tons of different cases. Like, I don't know if they just want to be a part of something and this is what they choose, or if they're just fucked in the head and like messing with people. Like, it's just brutal. Like, if you haven't seen them, don't say you've seen them. You know, like just crazy.
But
People
then
are
sometimes
nuts.
it could be like the people themselves that did it that are sending you on a wild goose chase too.
That's a good point. Yeah. Don't they say like everybody has a doppelganger, right? So maybe there's people that genuinely look like these kids. Weird.
The Sodders' surviving children and grandchildren continued the investigation and came up with theories of their own. The local mafia branch had tried to recruit George, and he declined. They tried to extort money from him, and he refused. The children were kidnapped by someone they knew. Someone who burst into the unlocked front door, told them about the fire, and offered to take them someplace safe. They might not have survived the night. If they had, and if they lived for decades, if it really was Lewis in that photograph, they failed to contact their parents only because they wanted to protect them. Sylvia, the youngest survivor of the fire, died in 2021 at the age of 79. Until the end, she remained steadfast in her belief that her siblings had escaped the flames. Growing up, Sylvia was the only child in a lot of ways. Her daughter, Jenny Henthorne, told The Independent in 2022. You've got to think that my aunts and uncles that were present after the fire, who were still at home, weren't really at home. Two had been away at war. They were grown. Henthorne, for her part, deemed it unlikely that her family would ever find closure. Anybody who knew what happened would have been my grandparents' age, she told The Independent. I would think that it's been public enough that if children wanted to be found later on in life, they would have reached out. That's the story of the Sodder's children's mystery. Or is it? As if it definitely sounds like something nefarious happened to 5 children. However, if we break the facts down, it may sound more like a series of unfortunate events. The 7-hour delayed response time of the fire department sounds horrific. However, you do have to remember that it was 1945 and they were all volunteer firefighters. It was Christmas Eve and there was a rural area. So while this would be unheard of today, it's fairly normal for that time. What about the 45-minute burn time? 45 minutes is definitely not long enough to incinerate 5 bodies to ash. The fire actually was still smoldering 7 hours later when the fire department arrived. It burned all night long and very hot, and into the next morning. When the fire department did finally appear at 8 a.m., it was still hot and they had to water the site down before conducting their search. The person who made the phone call on Christmas Eve was found by police and questioned. It was just a neighbor who dialed a wrong number.
You know, I'm going to say, volunteer or not, you're a firefighter. Like, I get it, it was 1945, but like, you're a volunteer firefighter and someone calls and says, hey, there's a fire. Guess what? Get your ass up, whether it's Christmas Eve or not, and go and help the people that their house is on fire. I'm just saying.
But I think it's fascinating that they had to call one person to call another person to like a game of like telephone tag.
Yeah, right? Because you couldn't. I mean, why didn't the person initially just call the one dude that would get them all? But I guess that's how, like, because they didn't have like a siren or whatever. No, that makes sense. It's like, hey, Bob, there's a fire. We gotta go. Call Charlie. Hey, Charlie, there's a fire. Call Frank. Right? Like,
Right. And that's how it was done back then because there was no cell phones and you had to call whoever you could get a hold of, right?
God, you know, technology is a pain in the ass at time, but thank God we have technology, right? It's hard to imagine sometimes. Thank God, I'm sure the volunteer firefighters today are way better.
Yeah, I don't know how that works because, like, in rural areas, they have a fire department, but there isn't somebody there all the time.
Yeah, so one of the guys that my husband worked with for years and years and years, he was a volunteer firefighter at the Chestermere Fire Department. So they had like they had like some main firefighters that was their full-time job, and then they had volunteers. So if he got a call, if he was on duty or like on call, whatever, for the volunteer, and he got called, he had to go and help with whatever.
Right.
Firefighters, man, they are so brave. They just fascinate me. The house is on fire. Let me run inside. Fuck. It's incredible. Sorry. I love firefighters.
Do you? You love firefighters?
I do. I just think they're so awesome. They're like superheroes. Like, I know that sounds so lame. Like, it makes me sound like I'm a 6-year-old boy, but I think they're the coolest people. Like, I'm in like awe of them. So I was walking my day home kids in the summer and we were just leaving the cul-de-sac and this fire truck pulled in and I was like, hey, look, guys, fire truck. And they were just inspecting the fire hydrant, but they hop out and they're talking to the kids and they're giving them like coloring books and stuff. And the whole time I'm like, wow, I'm just like more excited than the kids. I'm like, can I take your picture with the kids? Because the parents will love that. And they're like, yeah, for sure. And then so I take the kids' picture. This is how lame I am. And then I stand next to one of the firemen. I'm like, oh, thanks for all you do. Like, and I took a quick selfie. I'm like, you guys are awesome. I'm like, can I go on your truck? But obviously I could not because I had kids to look after. But I just think they're the coolest. They're like I don't know, they're like superheroes.
You should tell me one day. My dad he's pretty high in his business and he gets into all that stuff. So I've been through like the fire halls. I go through the EMS. I can go through anything. I can go through a
Yes.
pain.
Oh, do you know what I want to do? I want to go and try on a fire suit. When I worked at the daycare, we did like field trips at the local fire department. And I was always like, pick me, I want to go. But I never got to go. And I was like, damn it. Because I wanted to try on the fire suit. I wanted to go on the truck. I wanted to slide down the pole. I think it is the coolest thing.
My son loves it because my dad does this, right? So, you know, like the fire station that has all three of them on Sun Valley.
Yeah.
I got to go in there when they were all switching it up and that. So I get to see
That's
everything.
amazing. We should like do a podcast episode and like at a fire station. Just be like, oh yeah. We really just want to like tell our listeners all about you guys and stuff. And meanwhile, I'll just be like, wow, you guys are so cool.
You know the that police station that they just built up in the north?
Oh yeah.
You can go in by donation or whatever. My dad did that one too, and
That's so cool.
my dad saw like the black helicopter that comes down. He sends
That's
me
so
pictures
cool.
too. He gets into like all those big black trucks, and oh yeah, he does it all.
See, that is the coolest thing.
Like half the dads on my daughter's hockey team are all firefighters.
I'm coming to
We
watch
have
her play hockey.
so many of them. And the best is when they are in full gear
Right?
and they roll in on their fire truck to watch their daughter's game. I'm
That
like,
is the,
oh,
that is the coolest thing.
that is the coolest. But yeah, about half the dads, they like there are so many I haven't met any cops. They're all firemen.
That's
All of them.
amazing. We
Yeah.
should totally have a fireman on the podcast and like
Yeah.
interview him and stuff. And you guys will have to like do the interview because I'll just be watching and I'll be like, can you put your hat on? Can you just wear your hat?
I know my hairdresser, her husband's a firefighter.
Really? See, it's the coolest thing. And it's because they're so brave. Like, I am geeking out a little bit here. I know it's a job I would never have been able to do. Like, and I know people are like, oh no, it doesn't matter your size. You figure out a way. I'm 5 foot nothing. I'm 120 pounds when I'm like at my heaviest. I ain't carrying no one out of a burning building, okay? If I'm the firefighter that runs in when your house is on fire, you're gonna be like, oh, god damn it, I got the dud. Like, it's just, they don't make gear my size, right? Like, it's just an unfortunate thing about my size. I'm not gonna be able to do it. So it's one of those things that like I could never do, and I always thought it was the coolest thing. So I just like I'll watch reels of firemen and stuff like doing their training and because it's so incredible the training they have and just the like balls on those guys just to be able to
Yeah,
run
and
into a building, right?
I have a girlfriend who's a firefighter.
See, and that's
too.
kick ass.
I have a friend who's a girl that does that as a job.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
Because, like, don't get me wrong, I didn't mean that girls can't. I meant I personally can't.
I know.
Like,
I know.
I'm also asthmatic. There's a lot of things why I couldn't be a firefighter, but lots of girls totally can. And they are fucking hats off to them, man.
You know, we go shopping at Superstore every Sunday because they go shopping too.
Really? Do they go shopping in their uniforms?
Yeah. And they're
Yeah. In their truck too. I see them pull
Yeah.
into Sobeys all the time too.
I'd be like,
Because
sorry, go
they
ahead.
make their own food. They make their own food at the
Yeah.
house, right? They'll make lunches and dinners and all that stuff. So
That they're just so incredible. They're almost like I keep saying superheroes, but they're like it's almost like they're not real because they're so incredible. I am such a geek. I know. They just seem so like superhuman or something, right? Like they're just so incredible. Sorry, I derailed this so much. My love of firemen.
yeah, we're talking about firemen a lot.
I'm sorry. I mean, it was a fire. Like it's on topic.
All right. The people involved, the man who stole the block and tackle, Lonnie Johnson, was arrested and paid a fine. Authorities dismissed him having any involvement in the arson or a kidnapping. He possibly played a role in the errant ladder and cut the phone line. Mr. Johnson was a known liar, and it's as likely the pole side of the line was cut by any number of utility workers. Jan Utolo's involvement, if any, points to arson and not kidnapping. Kidnapping is by far the greater part of the mystery, not arson. There would have been nothing to gain by him kidnapping anyone. He was a well-respected bank owner in the local community and lived there long after. G and J Sodder never pointed the finger at him and continued to live nearby. The insurance salesman, Russell Long, who possibly made what we call today the threat, was sent by Janu Tolos. There were major issues with the Sodder home's wiring and what all professionals deemed started the actual fire, including the Sodders themselves, who were warned. What about the missing ladder? Well, it was found 75 feet away from the house. Being moved is less mysterious than being removed completely. The vehicles not starting seemed fishy. However, back then vehicles were carbureted. Carbureted vehicles can struggle to create the correct fuel to air ratio, especially when cold. As fuel doesn't atomize well in the cold, this is further complicated by issues like a poorly adjusted or malfunctioning choke, thick oil, and the potential for condensation or dirt in the carburetor or other engine components. Most likely, in their panic to start the trucks, they flooded the engines.
Yeah, sadly, that's the most likely why the trucks didn't start. Vehicles back in 45, they were brutal. Like starting old vehicles, man, it's an art form to start them. I have watched my husband start them, and then I have gone to start carbureted vehicles, and I'm like, it doesn't work. And he's like,
Right.
I'm like, it's broken, and he'll come out and start it and be like, it's just fine. I'm like, fuck. Yeah. Thank goodness we now have fuel injected and it doesn't matter. Volunteer firefighters did a very cursory search at 8 a.m. at the home's location for approximately 2 hours. The volunteers probably were not trained in forensic nor body identification at all. They likely had never seen a highly burned human nor searched for bones before and wouldn't know what to look for. In modern times, it would take a team of certified fire investigators days, if not weeks, to process a scene like this. Fire Chief Morris suggested the fire had been hot enough to completely cremate the children's bodies. Cremation times in morgues do not necessarily apply to this fire. Morgues use a higher heat, but far less time to expedite the cremation and to pulverize bones in a machine. Many morgue practitioners suggest that long duration and high temperatures of fire could have reduced the smaller and softer bones of these children to ash, or at least a chalk-like material that might have disintegrated as the house itself fractured and settled onto the coal-fueled furnace of its basement. So a quote from a funeral director with decades of experience in cremation. Their children, cremation temperatures and times are based on adult bodies and fully developed bones. The smaller the body, the faster it cremates and does not require the same level of heat. I think it's silly and does the memory of the children a great disservice to assume they escaped. There are other examples of bodies being missed by professionals afterwards, and a few, albeit rare, examples of fires completely cremating bodies, or enough so that the remains weren't identifiable or recoverable. There are rare cases where very little to no human remains were found by experts after a fire. Many cremation experts assert that due to many factors, one might expect to find very little of adolescent remains under these circumstances. The spinal bone found years later. The second forensics team came 5 years later, and what they found could possibly have been the eldest child, but more likely it was transported there and the dirt used to fill the basement up to 5 feet. This fill came from a nearby cemetery. That definitely would be the reason for the vertebrae. You know, if you're bringing infill from a cemetery. Because they used to move grave sites and stuff all the time back then without really much thought to it. So who knows if the if they had moved a gravesite or like an unmarked grave or something. It's hard to say.
Stacy Horn from a Blogspot post where she actually interviewed a number of fire professionals in Fayetteville. They all felt it was likely the children died first. Sterling Lewis said, if it got in the walls, it could literally have traveled straight up, what we call chimney, and go straight into the top floor and not even burn the first floor. Start in the basement and go to the third floor, because fire will jump like that. Very few individuals burn to death. They're always dead prior to the fire getting there due to smoke inhalation. Horn asks, why did the two oldest boys make it downstairs and none of the others? Is it possible that some of the children succumbed to smoke inhalation, but two didn't? Sterling Lewis, absolutely. We get that all the time. We'll find individuals laying in bed, dead, and then we'll find another individual that's laying a foot from the door. I mean, they were going to get out. Horn asks, it wouldn't have mattered even if they had arrived. Sterling Lewis, West Virginia State Fire Marshal. Sterling Lewis, let's just say it takes a 10-minute drive from the firehouse to the fire. There were no such things as our self-contained breathing apparatus. There would have been no entry into that house by a firefighter. So therefore, there would have been no rescue. However, every fire professional I spoke to said that they still would have shown up regardless. Not one of them were trying to excuse Morris. I want to be clear about that. Horn. Finally, the one fact that everyone comes back to. Little remains were found the next day, and what little was found was internal organs, and that just seems, well, weird. The family was never told that any remains were found, but the state fire marshal interviewed everyone who was on site the next morning, and 4 people reported seeing remains, including one of Jenny Sodder's brothers and a local priest. Whether or not they were being truthful, I cannot say. Sterling Lewis. In a fire, when the rest of the body is absolutely almost destroyed, whatever would be left of entrails a lot of times will turn just this beautiful shade of red. And that's what we look for, because then you're black and you're gray of all the char and everything. This red, it jumps out at you.
That's horrific. Also, to think like your bones basically they turn to that same red that the charcoal does in the bottom of a fire pit. Like if it was burning, it's kind of creepy.
And I know taking that funeral home course, they do say like your bones will disintegrate. You just might have small little fragments.
Yeah, and then
like tiny ones.
And they do like a smushing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The scene was not roped off and guarded while they were searching. That would never happen today, and because George Sodder bulldozed dirt into it, the scene was contaminated. Sergeant Mike Spradlin. The authorities had no way of knowing if it had been dug and bones planted or bones taken out. Horn. The family held onto a statement made by Ida Crutchfield, who ran a small hotel in Charleston, West Virginia in 1952. 7 years after the fire, she claimed she saw the children a week after the fire. She never met the Sodder children. She had only seen their pictures in the paper 2 years after the fire, not a credible witness. Sergeant Spradlin, for them to be carried out of that house and held against their will for that many years is implausible, because they could have easily escaped their captors. They've grown up, had children of their own, and for them never to try and contact the family is just, I don't buy that. From my reviewing of the report, there was really no stone left unturned. They tried to find those children if they existed, and it was just the children were never located. Horn. The police also never adequately investigated a man who made threats to the Sodder family before the fire and who stood to gain financially from the fire. This is gone too low, but this points to possible arson, not kidnapping. And that's one area I still have to investigate. From what I was told about him, he was not in need of money, was liked and respected in the community. Horn. But even George Bragg, who researched this case and who doesn't believe the children died in the fire, concedes that some parts of the story indicates that they did. In the police report, the Sodder's oldest son, John, said he woke the children. brag. It has been my experience when dealing with police reports and interviews after something like this happens, the first response by the person you are talking to is usually the most truthful. And that was his very first response. He told the state police that he walked into the room and shook the children and told them to come on downstairs. And to me, that's the one thing that I cannot understand. That would indicate that those children were in that bedroom. The family believes John said that because he felt that was what he should have done. Perhaps he was not the only one questioning his actions. Bradlin, survivor guilt plays into it. The adults get out of the house and the children don't. I always be second guessing myself. Maybe I could have done more and more and more. I'd want to believe that someone else was responsible and those children were alive and being held somewhere. Steve Cruikshanks. I've really seen a family that had a tragedy like that did not want to believe it's a psychological thing. You want to believe that something caused this to happen. It just couldn't have been a natural event.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, especially if you went to wake up your siblings, or if you didn't go to wake up your siblings, right?
Yeah.
So he said at first that he just shouted to them to come downstairs and then he ran out of the house. You're going to have guilt for that.
Yeah.
And not that it's his fault by any means. The house is on fire. He shouted to them. You would assume that the bedroom was not that far away, that normally if he shouted to his siblings that they would hear him and stuff. He couldn't have known. I mean, he probably lived with that guilt his entire life, but it was not his fault at all. The fire wasn't aggressively investigated at first because everyone was satisfied that they died in the fire. Once it became clear the family thought the children were still alive, the state police and the fire marshal did investigate. Every theory that was brought forth that could be investigated was investigated, as was every lead, except at this point, I can't tell if they thoroughly investigated Gelanto. They may have, but I haven't confirmed it yet. But the Sodder family didn't make a lot of noise about Gelanto, and since they didn't hesitate to make their objections known, that seems to indicate they too were satisfied that either Gelanto was not involved or that he was satisfactorily investigated. But still, he was the one person who had motive for arson, not kidnapping, and his name should have been all over the files, and it wasn't. The cut phone wires were never adequately explained. It's not that they didn't try, but short of an eyewitness, there was no way to know what happened. But it's another fact that points to a possible crime. I also found that according to the police and FBI records, at one point the Sodders thought one of Jenny's brothers had the children in Florida, and her own relatives were investigated, and they had to prove their children were their own. Given that law enforcement professionals agreed that if the children were removed from the house that night, either family or friends or relatives of the family were involved, it makes some sense. One of the strangest parts of the story, though, is the beef liver. The fact that the fire chief Morris initially told the Sodder family that no remains of the 5 missing children had been found in the ashes, suggesting the bodies had been completely incinerated. Then 5 years later, a local minister informed George Sodder that Morris had confessed to finding a body part, which he believed to be a heart, and had secretly buried it in a metal box at the fire site, hoping the family would find remains and stop their investigation. When George Sodder and a private investigator, C.C. Tinsley, confronted Morris, he agreed to show them the location. They excavated the box and took its contents to a local funeral director for examination, but the funeral director determined the organ was actually the beef liver, which had not been exposed to fire. F.J. Morris, the Fayetteville fire chief, faced no known official disciplinary action for burying the beef liver, which is fucked up. He definitely should have had some kind of disciplinary action, right? First of all, you falsified the investigation by hiding that. And what was the point? You just made yourself look guilty of something. Whether you are guilty of something or not, who knows, but you made it look that way. It's most likely that the 5 Sodder children perished in the fire, unfortunately, and a strange series of events turned an already tragic story into a mystery.
I think it's just crazy how times have changed, though.
Yeah.
Because, to us, it seems weird because, oh, yeah, you should have done this or you should have done that. But back then, this was normal. This is probably, the highlight.
Yeah. This is why all you young folk out there, this is why we don't erase history, right? Because we learn from it. Situations such as this one, this is how people developed fire retardant building materials. This is how the fire departments became what they are today, like from history such as this, right? Like not this specifically, only this case, but cases like this. This is how investigations were learned. You can't erase stories like this. There's so much we learn from them. And you're right, like it's completely different how fire departments work today.
Because who in their right mind would take dirt from a cemetery this time?
Right?
But it was common back then because where else
Yeah,
did you get dirt? They probably didn't have construction like we do.
exactly. And land was not like people owned land, obviously, but there was parts of lands that people just did whatever the fuck they wanted on, right? Like there wasn't the regulations that there are today.
If you go to the cemetery in Legacy, it's actually pretty cool because they have stones from back in 1812.
Yeah.
I was like, that's neat.
Yeah, there was
But
like
no one wants it.
well, there was a huge, like a big debate over that cemetery, right? Because the developers wanted that land, but they can't have it because it's sacred land. Like back then, obviously, you could just go into a cemetery and take whatever you wanted, apparently, but now, like, you can't now, right? Like, it's,
I think it depends because the one in Legacy you could just walk into.
yeah, well, all cemeteries are technically open to the public, right? But so you can go in and look around and stuff, but nobody can own the land or do anything to the land because it's sacred ground, right? Like you,
Well, I had to go and do history on this one because it's a small little thing. Like it's literally right next door to a Tim Hortons.
yep,
I was like, I just wanted to know the history of it. And apparently the city of Calgary doesn't want to take care of it. The city of DeWinton doesn't want to take care. Nobody wants this piece. It's apparently high school kids that come in and actually cut the grass twice a year.
yeah. It's sad, really. You know, like no one wants to take care of it. Like I feel like the city of Calgary, like step up, man. Like it's a cemetery. Just take care of it. Just have we know I'm gonna get flack for this, but we've all seen city workers sitting around doing fuck all. You can't, right? Like just drive a fucking lawnmower over there and take care of it. Trust
Yeah,
me, there's plenty of
exactly.
them,
It's not like you have to go and replace a tombstone. It's just
right?
look nice.
Mow the
And like,
fucking grass.
re-walk through it and you have like dead carcasses all over the place of random animals. And it's like,
Yeah,
look at that shit. Like that's all you have
right?
to do.
Like, yeah. I mean, I think that's honestly, that's so rude of the city to not take care of it.
No one apparently wants it.
Yeah.
And so kids, I think it might be a high school in
There's
Red.
a high school right near there in
No, this
Legacy.
one's in Red Deer, I think, that actually comes in. That's why they only do it.
That is so sad.
Yeah, it's not Calgary. I'll have to look at it to confirm it, but yeah, it's a school that comes in. I think it's from Red Deer.
There's a fucking high school in Legacy. It's right there, man. Come on. Like, it's your community. Like, yeah, it's a grave site, but I don't know. There's relatives to those people that were in there. They're people.
And no one's been put there in many years.
Right? I mean, I believe it should be left alone. Like nobody should like
No.
do any like you can't take the land and develop over it. Absolutely not. There's people buried there. You're shit out of luck. That is now a cemetery forever. But I don't know. The city of Calgary, man, step up. Take care of it.
But the history behind it, like that's something that you could
Right?
enforce because it was brought out because it was someone's farmyard that they took
Yeah.
a piece out because it was their daughter that died at a really young age and they
Yeah.
put it in her name and like it's history. So just keep up
Exactly.
with it.
Right? They're every summer. Like, so I back onto, or I can see like a Tim Hortons from my backyard, whatever. There's always a whole line of like City of Calgary trucks with their lawnmowers and shit sitting on there while they're all inside Tim Hortons. And I get it, they deserve a lunch break, whatever. The fact that sometimes they are in there for 2 hours, whatever. Like, you get a 2 hour lunch break, I guess, but you know what? Take 5 minutes out of that lunch break and just go mow the cemetery grass. It's like 5 minutes from here. So I'm just saying, City of Calgary, you got some workers that are not doing stuff for a while, so go take care of the fucking cemetery, assholes. Oh, that's the swearing stuff people get mad about, isn't it? My bad. Well, Merry Christmas, y'all.
Merry Christmas.
This one comes out the Monday before Christmas. So this is your Christmas episode. Hope we put you all in a festive mood. Oh, this was kind of mean of us, wasn't it? That's right. You guys excited for Christmas? And it'll be like 4 days?
Yeah.
Just to clarify, it's November right now when we're recording this. So if you're all are like, what are you talking about? We're recording in November. Is it November still? Yeah. It's December 1st,
Yeah.
right?
December 1st is tomorrow, because
That's
guess
right.
what's
Yeah.
back?
What's back?
Yelp.
Oh,
God.
you got you.
I hadn't even put up my Christmas tree yet.
We just did ours today.
We were gonna do ours today and we ran out of time, so I don't know. Yeah.
Get on it, man. It's December in a few
I
hours.
know. I don't even know where my elves are.
So that's it for Moms on Mics this week.
Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Moms on Mics Podcast, on TikTok at Moms on Mics, and join our Facebook group, Moms on Mics.
If anyone has any topics you would like us to cover, or if you have any questions or suggestions, you can email us at momsonmics@gmail.com or submit through our website, momsonmics.com.
We would also appreciate it if you could rate and review us on whatever platform you're listening on. It really helps the podcast move up on their charts so it gets more exposure. I hope you join us again next week. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.